Alright, well, finally got Super Metroid, and the seller absolutely guaranteed me this time that it would not be DJ Boy. Alright, let's take a look and see what we got here. But Mortal Kombat. Well, I mean, that's alright. It's a good soundtrack. I could have done a lot worse. Yeah, Praga Khan action and a little bit of. Well, fuck me. Well, howdy party people and space cadets, and welcome to the Galactic Happy Hour. I'm your host, Spider Slim, and on this week's episode we'll be talking about my top favorite classic video games. And by classic video games, I essentially mean from the very beginnings to the 16-bit generation. Anything after that would kind of be more middle school type games. And you know what? I didn't say old school, so that joke makes absolutely no sense right there. But anyways, number 5 on the list is Altered Beast from 1988 by Sega. Now, I'm mostly going to be talking about the arcade version, but I have some fond memories of the Genesis version of 2. And I will just go ahead and get it right out there in the open. I don't care what the cool kids say. This is a great game, and I don't know why it suddenly became trendy to make fun of Altered Beast. I mean, it was popular enough that it was the packing game with the Genesis/Mega Drive in the beginning. I mean, come on. That had to say something about its popularity that they would put it in there to begin with. But Altered Beast was a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you played as two warriors brought back from the dead by Zeus to rescue his daughter. And this was the very first time I ever saw dudes tear off their shirts using just their rippling muscles. And it's probably what started my love of seeing dudes tear off their shirts using only their muscles. Wow, I mean, I loved this game. And I have to say, one of my most vivid memories of it, from the very first time I actually went to an arcade with the sole purpose of going to an arcade. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I don't care. This was the very first game I saw when I walked in the door of a little place called Night Castle back in my hometown. It was a dark, kind of spooky little place, just filled with not even the most current games at the time. They had a few current games, and Altered Beast was one of them. And I remember seeing it in that Rise from Your Grave, and I was hooked, and I absolutely loved it. Now, as to what I meant by going with the sole purpose of going to an arcade. When I was really small, my mom liked skee-ball, so when we would go on vacation, we would often go to little places, kind of like arcades, had food and other kind of amusements, so she could play skee-ball. And there were games there. But this was the first time I went to an arcade for myself to go to an arcade. Yeah, back to the point at hand, Altered Beast. And I used to play this game so much. I got really good at it too. Like, I get it all the way to the second or third level just on one quarter. And this was the game that made me want a Genesis. Like, when I found out it was the packing game, I just absolutely had to have it. I'll tell you what though, a buddy of mine, I don't remember which one it was, but I mean, which system, not the buddy. I remember which buddy it was, even though he wasn't a very good buddy. I actually talked about him before, being kind of a crazy person. But got a weird computer port of the game that was so just not anything like it. And I remember I got the Genesis version, and I thought I was cool, and he got kind of pissy because I had a good version and he had a bad version. And a little piece of trivia about Altered Beast. It was actually inspired in part by Thriller, The Howling, and Ray Harryhausen movies. Yeah, don't go wrong with any of those things.
Welcome to your doom.
And number 4 on the list, and that is Rescue Rangers from 1990 by Capcom for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, let me tell you something. Capcom Disney games at that time were great. If there was a Disney game and it had that Capcom logo on it, you could almost guarantee a good time. And of all the great Disney Capcom games, this was by far my favorite. Just the most fun. It was a 2-player, you could play as Chip or Dale, side-scrolling type adventure game, but you had a world map type thing that you could kind of choose your path somewhat, and you could pick up objects like crates and fruits and stuff and throw them around. And then Monterey Jack would occasionally pop up and break down barricades, while Zipper grants you temporary invulnerability. And then Gadget, even though she's kind of kidnapped, most of the game provides tips and advice for the chipmunks in each stage. Now, the plot of the game, basically, the Rescue Rangers are going to find a lost kitten. But it's a trick, and poor Gadget gets kidnapped instead. And in the end, you fight Fat Cat, who sits behind a desk and drops cigar ashes on you, and you have to dodge the cigar ashes as you throw a ball at him. Talk about great. You can't even see that kind of thing in game. I mean, they would have a fit if they had even a bad guy smoking in a game these days. Nonetheless, the main bad guy dropping ashes on you. Yeah, and this game had some fantastic music too. Oh, I can remember so well the stage, one of the later ones with the pipes, where kind of, I think you're in a sewer or something, it's been a little while. I just remember that music being so good. And one special thing about Rescue Rangers, it was one of the holy grail two-player games. Even though most of my friends had tentacles and not hands, still always loved it when a fun game was two players. And that was so often the case with Nintendo games, they just weren't that many two-player games. And yeah, I don't know why, but it's always just more fun to play with friends, even if they had tentacles and not fingers. Now, a piece of trivia about Rescue Rangers, there was a lesser-known sequel that came out in 1993. I don't know if I even knew about it, because I just kind of saw it as an adult. It was on my Super NES Mini modded, and I was like, huh? What's this? So I played it. It's, yeah, a good bit harder than the original. Haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but either way, there was a sequel. Next. And number 3 on the list is Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, 1992, by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo. This overhead view action-adventure game was Zelda's introduction to the 16-bit era. It moved away from the mind-numbingly hard style of Part 2 and moved back more to the first one's style of play, and added a ton more to it. I mean, this is the first Zelda game that I really actually loved, because I'd played the first one, never got through it, played a bit of the second one and realized how mind-numbingly hard it was. It just wasn't really a franchise for me until this one. And as I was saying, it introduced a bunch of new things to the series that would be series staples from then on, many games through on. It introduced the hook shot, the Master Sword, the spin attack, and the Pegasus boots. Now, it told the story of a brand new Link on a new adventure. Man, that Zelda timeline is confusing stuff. And this was also the first Zelda to have parallel worlds in which the player travels between. Now, as I was saying, I didn't really get super into the Zelda games at that point until this one, but I loved the Zelda world. I'll tell you that the Legend of Zelda animated series was one of my absolute favorites as a kid. I really was upset that it only lasted, 12 episodes? Something like that, and then it was gone. Now, this one, actually, because again, like I was saying, I just was not that into the series, so I really didn't have any interest in it, but a friend had it, and I tried it over at his house. I was like, wait a second, this is something a little different, and I had to have it, and it ended up being a Christmas present that year, and it's still to this day my favorite Zelda game. So much fun. But I will tell you, I played that Link's Awakening on the Switch not long ago, the remake, and wow, that was fantastic as well. I wish they would give that same treatment to Link to the Past. That would be amazing. Now, a piece of trivia about A Link to the Past, Shigeru Miyamoto originally intended the game to feature a party, one that consists of a protagonist, who's a mix between an elf and a fighter, a magic user, and a girl. Thought that was interesting. And that's all I got to say about that.
Did you know that Sega video games are available for rental from your local video store? Did you know that Sega Master Systems are also available for rental? Did you know that Sega leads the world in the development of new and exciting video games? Did you know that Sega games feature the sharp, clear video images, vibrant colors, and realistic sound you've been craving? Did you know that Sega games have challenges for players from beginners through to masters? Did you know that Sega has a range of titles including the well-known hits Afterburner and Double Dragon? Did you know that fantasy space games, fast action games, and realistic sports simulations are all in the rapidly expanding Sega range? Did you know that each month up to 10 hot new Sega releases will be available for rental? Sega, all kinds of games, all kinds of fun. Sega, let the games begin.
And we're back, and it's time for the horoscope of the week. And this week's horoscope goes to Taurus. Taurus, you will be kidnapped by a chain-smoking cat. Sadly, though, since you are notoriously unpopular with rodents, no one is coming to save you. And number 2 on the list is Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars from 1996 by Square for the Super Nintendo. Yeah, I clearly have a Super NES bias, cause next to the PS3, it's probably my favorite system of all time. So, Super Mario RPG is exactly what it sounds like. A role-playing game set in the Mario universe by Square. And they were like Capcom in the early 90s. Or shoot, the 90s in general. If they made an RPG, it was going to be good. You just knew it. That Square logo was a sign of quality. And this is not your usual Mario adventure. Though it starts out that way with Bowser kidnapping the princess, you end up saving her pretty early on, and she joins the party. And not only does she join the party, Bowser joins the party, and you go up against an even bigger bad. This game was so much fun. And not only was it your turn-based RPG kind of game, it added some interesting mechanics, some little timing kind of things. Like different weapons did different little things. For example, Mario had a turtle shell he could get, and you would throw it up in the air, and if you hit the button at just the right moment, I guess he kicked it even harder, and it did more damage when it hit. And there were several little mechanic-y, gimmicky things like that that were super cool. And now, trivia about this game. Super Mario RPG was the last Super Nintendo game released by Square in America. Yep. Guess I should have said this before I jumped to the trivia, which I kind of used to end these segments. But I also got this one for Christmas that year, and it just blew me away. Yeah, if you've never played this game, find it. It's on the Super Nintendo Mini, I think it's a packing game, but really, play it any way you can. Fantastic times. Even if you aren't into role-playing games, this is really something different. And you could definitely use an updated remake like the Link's Awakening on the Switch. And number 1 on the list, and this is a game that just to this day, I get nostalgia kind of feels just even hearing music from it. And that is Mega Man 2 from 1989 by Capcom for the Nintendo. So maybe it's not as good a game as some of the other choices on the list, objectively speaking, but the nostalgia for this one is just so high for me. And it's probably the most popular Mega Man game of the series. Shoot, I guess it would be the most popular because it's the best-selling Mega Man game in the series, and for good reason. It absolutely 100% lives up to the hype. And it's a side-scrolling adventure game, and man, just the game setup. You basically have kind of a selection of bosses, which I'm sure every one of you watching this has played a Mega Man game. But if not, you have a selection of bosses, and you can fight them pretty much in any order. And then once you defeat all the robot masters, they're all robots, even Mega Man, they're all robots. You get 4 more levels or 5 more levels, whatever it is, to go against the final boss. Yeah, good stuff. My personal favorite stage was the Bubble Man stage. I just loved being able to jump all super high in the water. Man, just thinking about it. When I first found out about this one, it was in an issue of Nintendo Power. I'd never even heard of the original, but I saw this just tiny little write-up thing about it, and there's a picture of Crash Man. And his design, I just thought was so cool. I just had to play this game for this amazing character named Crash Man. Now, actually playing the game, you'll probably know that Crash Man wasn't that special. I mean, they're all super special and spiffy. I mean, you're just kind of easy. Kind of a jobber. One of the jobbers of the Mega Man universe. Especially if you had the Airman's weapon. Yeah, that was the one. Now, piece of trivia, since the first game wasn't very popular, there was some resistance within Capcom to make a sequel. But the guy behind it finally got permission from Capcom's vice president, but he had to do so by agreeing to work on it in his free time while he worked on other projects. And most of the work on Mega Man 2 was done in the creative team's spare time while they had to juggle other projects. That was pretty impressive. And that's my list. But I did think I wanna, oh man, the drunk is woohoo tonight. But I did want to mention an honorable mention, and that is Super Metroid, which is actually my favorite, I think, classic game. But I've talked about it so many times before. I think I talked about it on the Christmas morning video game list, on the spooky video game list. Just every video game list has Super Metroid, so I just didn't want to go on and on and on about Super Metroid again. But it gets an honorable mention, even though technically it's number one. And that's all the time we have this week. Please like, comment, subscribe, and may your pants always be filled with 8-bit marshmallows.